Back Look Cinema, the podcast.
Look at me. What I'm thinking is, you're mine. I fucking own you. But what I'm not doing is feeling one way or another about it. You see? You're not a person to me. You're an entry in my book. That's all. You're just the guy that owes me money. Hi, my name is Zoe. It's spelled Z-O or Z to the O for those of you outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 165th episode of Back Look Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. And we are back. We're back being true to form, going back and talking about the movies of the 70s and 80s and 90s. I know for the past couple of weeks, I've talked about some movies that came out recently and the so-called bonus episodes, which were they really bonus episodes if there were no regular episodes in between? We can decide that later. But for now, let's go back into one of the regular episodes. And if you like what you're about to hear, then tell your family, tell your friends, and tell your favorite Shylock, loan shark, pawnbroker, or moneylender about Backlook Cinema. Hey, look, I'm joking. Stay away from those guys. Just stay away. You don't need to talk to those guys. They're a problem. They're a real problem. And hopefully you'll never find yourself in a situation where you have to talk to a loan shark. So anyway, welcome back. And thanks for listening. And I'm glad to be able to talk to you today about one of my favorite movies. The interesting thing about this movie is that it's a comedy or comedy-ish, comedy related. And when I'm going back to like a comedy, I get a little bit nervous because I'm wondering if I'm going to enjoy it like I did the first time. The last time I talked about a comedy, I'm going back again to talk about a comedy. And this is more of a crime comedy. And is it still going to be relevant? It's not the word I'm looking for, but how well has this story aged? And we get to find out about that together. So finally, after a 2-week, I guess it's a 2-ish week delay, we're going to talk about Get Shorty from 1995. Now about this movie. Chili Palmer is a loan shark for the mob in Miami. He's very good at collecting the money he's owed, but when a freakish series of events lands him in Los Angeles, he becomes enamored by the film industry. On the spot, he decides that he wants to be a movie producer, but first, he has to tie up some loose ends. One doesn't just quit the mob after all. Get Shorty was released October 20th, 1995, produced by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Jersey Films. It grossed over $72 million in the U.S. and Canada and over $115 million worldwide on a reported budget of $30 million. Now, if we adjust for inflation so we can wrap our minds around it, that would mean that the film would have grossed $149 million if it were released today in the U.S. and Canada. It would have grossed $238 million worldwide, and the budget would have been around $62 million. Now, here's the trick. It didn't, I like to think of how well a movie did by how much it grossed as far as profitability is concerned. And it just barely breached profitability with the U.S. and Canadian releases. I would suggest that it just barely broke even, and it really made its money over in the international box office. So that's an interesting note. So Get Shorty stars John Travolta as Chili Palmer. You may have seen him in Pulp Fiction, Broken Arrow, which we covered in episode 20, Hairspray, Bolt, which I didn't realize he was in or forgotten. But then again, I don't think I've watched Bolt. And finally, The Punisher, that came out in 2004. He's really good in that movie. I liked that movie. So that's the movie with, I can't remember his name right now. He has two first names. One of them is a woman's name. But anyway, it was that was a fun Punisher movie. Up next is Gene Hackman. He plays Harry Zimm. You may have seen him in The French Connection, The Conversation, or one of my favorites, Behind Enemy Lines. Rene Russo. I'm sorry. I took a pause and then I took a breath and I tried to say the name and the name didn't come out right. Rene Russo plays Karen Flores. You may have seen her in Nightcrawler, The Thomas Crown Affair, or Avengers Endgame. Danny DeVito plays Martin Weir. You may have seen him in Matilda, The War of the Roses, or Batman Returns, which I covered in episode 61. I remember him all the way from the very beginning when he was a character on one of my favorite TV shows, Taxi. Dennis Farina plays Ray Bones Barboni. You may have seen him in Snatch, Manhunter, Reindeer Games, and that movie got a 5.8 on IMDb, and I cannot understand it. Maybe I'm just a guy who likes bad movies because I really like Reindeer Games. And Dennis Farina he plays one of two character types. He's either a mobster or a police detective. Maybe a lawyer every once in a while, but he's very good at portraying those roles. Delroy Lindo plays Bo Catlett. Interestingly enough, I never knew his characters' names throughout the entire time I watched this movie. I feel like when I made these notes, is the first time I've realized what his character's name was. You may have seen him in Romeo Must Die, Up, or The One. Well, actually, you heard him in Up. You didn't actually see him in Up, but you know what I mean. Continuing right along, we have James Gandolfini. He plays Bear. You may have also seen him in Enough Said, Zero Dark 30, or The Taking of Pelham 123 in 2009. And I know that most people know him from the award-winning, critically acclaimed television show, The Sopranos. David Paymer played Leo DeVoe. You may have seen him in Mr. Saturday Night, Quiz Show, or The American President. It wasn't a huge role in this movie, but it was a very important role. And I like to include him in this list because I just like seeing him on film. He's delightful. He's a delightful character actor, and he's always kind of funny, even when he's playing a serious role. So also in this movie, there are a number of uncredited cameo appearances, especially one, Bette Midler. I didn't realize that she was uncredited because she's instantly recognizable, and she has a pretty meaty role. Like she has a very significant role. She plays a character named Doris. It's not like some of the other uncredited appearances. So there was an appearance at the end of the film of Harvey Keitel playing himself, and Penny Marshall also playing herself. So as a matter, for some reason, because Penny Marshall is at the end of this movie playing herself as a director, I was thinking that she directed this movie, but she didn't. This movie was actually directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, and you may have seen some of his movies. They include Men in Black, Wild Wild West. You know what? I don't think a lot of you saw Wild Wild West because it did not do well at the box office and it's heavily derided. But a lot of you did see Addams Family and the related movies. And For Love of Money, I'm not sure. I know I didn't see it, but maybe you did. Or you may have seen Big Trouble. So this movie was written by Elmore Leonard and Scott Frank. Leonard is responsible for the story. He wrote the novel upon which this movie is based. And he said that Get Shorty was the best film adapted from one of his books. And it looks like it. It looks like a well-adapted screenplay. And as you watch the movie, they have disparate story elements that are complex, but seem to come together at the end. He also wrote 3:10 to Yuma, the 1957 film. He wrote Joe Kidd and Mr. Majestic. And then he also wrote this novel called Rum Punch. And Rum Punch is a novel upon which Jackie Brown was based. And he also wrote novels Out of Sight and The Moonshine War, and they were also made into films. So he's a very prolific writer at his time. And then we have Frank, who wrote the screenplay, and I believe he wrote the screenplay or the story, something or other. But because Leonard didn't write the script, but so that would mean that Scott Frank wrote the story. And he also wrote Logan, Out of Sight, The Lockout, Minority Report, and Flight of the Phoenix from 2004. I don't think he wrote any of these all by himself, but he definitely was a major. He's credited as writing, as one of the writers for these movies. And I'm sure that you've seen some of these movies. At least I've seen a lot of these. I've seen Logan, I've seen Minority Report, I've seen Flight of the Phoenix. So 3 out of 5. The music in this movie was by John Lurie. He's also written the music for Stranger in Paradise, Subway Riders, Mystery Train, and Lulu on the Bridge. And that's it for the opening credits. And I make these same announcements over and over again. and it's just these two announcements. I am going to beef up the backlickcinema.com/shop store. Please go there, check out some of the designs, some of the shirts, some of the mugs, some of the tumblers they call them, and check out those designs. I'm sure there'll be some more soon on the way. And then also there is Bazaar de Alonzo, the store on eBay that I'm trying to get up off the ground that I haven't done yet, but still working on. And that's it for those things, those announcements. And now I want to get to the meat and potatoes of the show, talking about our favorite parts. All right, we are back to talk about some of our favorite parts of the movie. So as I was saying, that I was kind of concerned about whether this movie, how well this movie is going to age. And I am happy to report that this movie aged extremely well. I enjoyed it this time, at least as well as I enjoyed it the first time I seen it, if not more. I can't even remember when I first seen this movie or why I was even interested in watching this. Probably with Denzel Washington. John Travolta. He was going through his resurgence, the Travolta Renaissance. He starred in a lot of movies in that Renaissance era, like I'm trying to think. I think Pulp Fiction was the beginning of that Renaissance, and then some of the other movies were like Broken Arrow. There was a movie, Michael, I remember that he was in, about him being the angel Michael. He was just in a lot of movies in a short period of time, and Get Shorty was part of that. So I think that's why I wanted to see the movie. And I don't remember if I've seen it, if I saw it in the theaters first, or if I rented, or the DVD, or I probably didn't even have a DVD player at the time. It was probably a video. Or did I watch it at home? I can't remember. Did I watch it on HBO? I couldn't tell you. But I remember that when I did watch it, I enjoyed it immensely. And I haven't seen this movie in years. I don't even remember the last time I saw it. But I'm glad I got to see it again. And it thrilled me as much this time as it did the last time. So some of the things that I really like about this movie, I'm going to try to limit it to 5 of my favorite things, 5 of our favorite things. And then some of these things will be kind of grouped together because there are a lot of things in this movie. It is complex. So, and if you're not really paying attention, you could get lost. For instance, I don't know how the whole impetus of the movies, you have this gangster, and he wants to get out of the gang life. He ends up in Los Angeles looking for somebody who owes money, and he's instantly enamored with the lifestyle. He wants to be a movie producer, and he's actually going to adapt a portion of his life, like the task that he's on right now, hunting down this person that owes him money. He wants to develop that into a movie. And so in the course of doing all of this, he gets caught up in a lot of mob shenanigans. And there's at one point, he has a whole bunch of money that he was able to get from the guy that owes him money. And then in another element of the film, there's another mobster, and he also has a lot of money that he basically left at an airport locker. It's either an airport locker or a train station locker. I can't remember if it's an airport or what do you call it, a bus station, but it's in one of those places. So the money is left in the locker, but it's kind of a trap because he knows that he put the money in the locker at a time when the FBI somehow found out about it. So they're watching who's going to get the money out of the locker because the money is connected to a drug deal. So you have those two elements, and everybody is after all of this money. And also, in particular, John Travolta's character, Chili, he needs the money in order to finance the film. He's found a producer, and he wants the producer to make the film, and he wants the money that he has, either from the person that owes him money or from the from the locker. He wants that money so that he can finance the film. But at the end of the movie, the money is lost seemingly, and so I have no idea how they finance the money, and that's part of the complexity of the film. It may be because while I was watching the film, I was taking notes, and then some of the details got lost as I was note taking. So I don't know at the end of the day how this movie was financed. Because his dream came true. They started to make a movie that was based on that particular job that he was doing, essentially a movie based on his life. But at the same time, I have no idea where the money came from to finance this movie, because he's supposed to be the movie producer. How did he pay for all of this? It's all very confusing. I would probably have to rewatch to figure out all the complexities of it. But I blame that on myself. I'm pretty sure that people who will watch the movie, they're probably listening right now going, well, of course, he did this, that, and the other. That's how he's able to pay for it. But I'm lost in the sauce right now. But that being said, I want to talk about some of the things that might be considered the themes of this movie. And the main theme is say what you mean and mean what you say. And that's one of the charming things about Chili, the character that Travolta plays, is that he's basically honest. Like, I don't think that he outright lies throughout the entire movie. I think the audiences sympathize with him, even though he's kind of a gangster. He's very straightforward. He basically tells the truth all the time. And when he doesn't double speak, like, he says what he means all of the time. He's very direct in his language. It's almost like he doesn't understand it when people are lying. I don't think he's a character that understands the use of being duplicitous or two-faced. Like, I don't think he understands these concepts. He's kind of blasé about life. So he's a character that he says what he means, and he meant what he said he's going to, he means what he says. So, I think that's one of the main themes of the movie. The people who are lying or who are being two-faced or duplicitous, these people have a tendency of failing in the movie. And because he's an honest character, he kind of comes out on top. And when people are trying to fake the funk, so to speak, they end up they don't come out on top. They don't come out well. They run into some roadblocks or they get injured, right? So that's the thing about. That's why I think that being honest or say what you mean what you say. I think that's why I think that this is the theme of the movie. So one of my favorite things is the characters. I love all of the characters in this movie. The characters are rich. They feel real and lived in. And a lot of these characters are based on people the actors know in real life. So they're drawing from their own real lived experiences. And I think that's one of the reasons that these characters felt real. And I'll get into a little bit more of that in the trivia on some of the inspirations for some of these characters. But it's, and then the actors, this is like a very good cast. This is like a cast of outstanding actors. So you get this group and you basically just let them cook, and they're doing, they're putting on a delightful performance. So Chili, for example, he's extremely charming, and he's easygoing, and he's like I don't know. I don't want to say he's like the sort of guy you want to have a beer with, because he's also very dangerous, but he's like quiet dangerous. See, I think that he wants to come off as both charming and menacing at the same time, or maybe not menacing at all. Just he wants you to know that he's serious, I guess. But Chili is very delightful. One of my favorite characters is Gene Hackman. He plays Harry Zimm. And the thing about Zimm is that you don't normally see Gene Hackman playing this type of character. And what I mean is that Harry Zimm is sort of cowardly, also kind of, he's a duplicitous character. He's kind of two-faced he's a kind of backstabbing, and also, I said he's cowardly. It was like not at all brave. He's like the opposite of the type of character that Gene Hackman normally plays. So it was interesting to see Gene Hackman in this type of light, playing this type of role. And also Zimm is inept, right? Is kind of incapable. Zimm is the type of person that deals with the unsavory characters to finance his films. Harry Zimm is kind of a Roger Corman-like producer producing low budget horror movies. And he goes to the criminal underworld to try to finance his projects. And there's one project that he's kind of caught up on, and the guys that loaned him the money, or that invested in his movie, they are coming to find out the progress on his movie. And you have Chili in the office. You have Harry Zimm in Harry Zimm's office. They're both talking, and these guys, they look out the window. They see the guys that are coming to talk to Harry Zimm, and Chili knows that these guys are gangsters, and he knows how to talk to gangsters, and he wants to set up a scenario where he can negotiate with these gangsters so that everybody can get what they want. And he's giving Zimm direction on how to behave. Like he says, I'm going to sit in your desk. I want these guys to sit in these chairs right here. I want you to stand behind the guys, and I don't want you to say anything. You just stand there and you don't say anything, and I'll do all the talking. If you got to say anything at all you have to do is introduce me. Just point and say, this is my associate. So introduce me as your associate, but don't tell him my name or anything like that. But the problem is the guys get there, and Zimm is so inept, he's so cowardly that he can't shut up. He immediately breaks the rules. He immediately tells everybody in the room who Chili Palmer is. And Chili Palmer can't negotiate the way he wanted to, because essentially Zimm kind of like spilled the beans. He messed up the mystique that Chili Palmer was trying to create with these other gangsters, and ultimately was not able to get the get the deal that he was hoping for with these gangsters. So it was all due to Harry Zimm's like ineptness and his cowardness and his bumbling kind of way of doing things. So there are a number of scenes like this throughout the movie that makes the movie a pleasure to watch. It's not exactly ha funny, more of like, oh, I see what you did there funny. And I really enjoyed that. All the other characters, like Danny DeVito plays like a kind of a full of himself actor. He plays as a very serious actor named Martin Weir, and just fantastic. And throughout the movie, you see posters of him playing Napoleon, which is interesting because we just had a movie of an actor playing Napoleon. So I thought it's like watching the movie now. It applies layers of meaning that didn't exist before. So I just wanted to point out those three actors in particular, those three characters. Also, let me shout out Dennis Farina as Barboni, Ray Bones Barboni. So, and him just basically playing his gangster persona, and ratcheting it up a notch in the ridiculousness of being a gangster. So, yeah, I liked all of these. Delroy Lindo as Bo Catlett, Rene Russo as Karen Flores. They're all doing a wonderful job. So I love the characters in these movies, or in this movie in particular. Another one of my favorite parts is the overall story. So here's the thing. It's super complex. I couldn't like give you a rundown of the story if I tried. I would have to watch the story 3 or 4 times before I could confidently tell you, go through the story beat by beat on the things that happen in the story. It feels like a series of interconnected vignettes that by themselves are a pleasure to watch, but then you're able to stitch them together to make a very competent movie. So, like, for example, there's a scene, I just explained one of the scenes where you have Zimms and Palmer in the office with these gangsters, and then you have Chili and Harry having a combo about a movie idea. There's a running theme with there's a minivan that used to exist called the Oldsmobile Silhouette. The company Oldsmobile doesn't exist anymore, but it was very prominent when I was growing up. My mom had an Oldsmobile. She had an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. And that's my entire early childhood. That was our family car. And you would see Oldsmobiles everywhere. And the Oldsmobile Silhouette was like a simple bullet-shaped minivan. And I used to see them around a lot. And in this movie, it actually feels like a character, because like Palmer, when when he's at the airport, he's trying to get his car, his rental car, and he asked for a Cadillac, but the only thing that's available is the Oldsmobile Silhouette. And the lady, he has to take a bus, like a what do you call that? It's like a mini bus that from the airport or from the terminal to where he's picking up the car. And she said, and he complains to her. He said, I asked for a Cadillac. And she says, well, the Oldsmobile Silhouette is a Cadillac of minivans, right? So he's kind of stuck with this car. But the neat thing about Chili is that since he has the car and he has to ride around in the car, this has to be his transportation while he's in Los Angeles. What he decides to do is that he kind of, because he wants to have this sort of persona of somebody being important, but he can be somebody important in a Cadillac. He can't really be somebody important driving a minivan. So what he does is he plays up the importance of the minivan, right? He tells that since he was told that the minivan was the Cadillac of minivans, and he impresses everybody else with how it's a Cadillac of minivans, and he tells everybody else how great the minivan is, and he demonstrates the nice features that it does, like the automatic side door that he can push a button on the remote and the door automatically slides open. He impresses millionaires with how great the minivan is. And then by the end of the movie, everybody is driving around in a Oldsmobile Silhouette. So the movie is fun in that way. So there are a lot of developments. There are a lot of vignettes that are pretty awesome in this movie. And those were just a couple of examples. So the overall, I just love the way that it's complex, but not so complex that you get lost in it. Like I know it's just going to sound like I'm talking, I'm being two-faced about this. I only got lost in the one element of where this money, how they financed the movie, but everything else in the movie, it really falls into place quite nicely. And I really enjoyed that. Another thing I enjoyed about the movie was pretty much all the interactions that Chili has with the other characters. And I guess this folds into the characters, or me liking the characters. But there are a number of scenes, like I mentioned one where Chili and Harry, they have a convo about his movie idea. Then there's also Chili having a conversation with Danny DeVito's character. And in that, he's talking to, like, basically, you have Chili talking to Weir, this famous, prestigious actor. He's trying to get the actor to, basically, he wants to test the mettle of the actor to see, how good of an actor Martin Weir is. So he plays out a scenario and try to basically get a demonstration of his skills. He wants to see Martin Weir portray the type of gangster that Chili Palmer is. I guess he wants to see himself in Chili Palmer. Well, Chili Palmer wants to see himself in Martin Weir. That's what he's trying to get out of him. So there's a wonderful scene in the middle of the movie where he's like, he's trying to get that out of him. And that's great. There's a scene where, Chili and the stuntman meet. So you have the stuntman Bear, played by James Gandolfini, and their interaction together. It's like, so Bear is basically the bodyguard of Bo Catlett, played by Delroy Lindo. And there's one scene, I don't know if this is when they actually meet, but there's one meeting they had, and they're at a restaurant, and they're trying to, Bo Catlett is trying to intimidate Chili Palmer with his bodyguard, Bear. And Chili Palmer, he's like, "You're a stuntman, right?" And Bear says, "Yeah, I'm a stuntman." And because Palmer is kind of on the lower stairs, and Bear and Bo are higher on the stairs, it's easy for Chili to punch and grab Bear by his balls and then basically toss him down the stairs. And after he does that, he's like, "Oh yeah, you're a really good stuntman, right?" It's like, that's just a great scene. Now Bo is because his stuntman just easily got taken out. He's unable to intimidate Chili, so he just carries himself down the stairs. But it's like scenes like that where Chili has these interactions with the other characters. There's another scene where Chili and Bear, they get into a fight, and Chili beats up Bear pretty badly, and but all the while, Chili is like, "You could do better than this guy. You could do better than Bo. What are you doing here?" And Bear is like, "Well, I just need the money." It's like, come on, man, we could do better than that guy. And they basically find a common bond. They become friends, and they basically team up. And then later on in the movie, they take out Bo, and that was pretty cleverly done. So it's like the interactions that Chili has with the other characters it's pretty nice, and I really liked how that all played out. I'm not even sure how many of those that I counted. I was supposed to be doing 5, but I'm really bad at countdowns. So, but I just, because there were too many of the scenes that I liked, and I didn't want to just blurt out all the scenes. I wanted to try to group them together into like batches of scenes, and I think I botched that up. But you get the idea. The overall story was good. The interactions, the characters themselves were good. The interactions between the characters were great. Let me get one more interaction where you have basically is Bones versus Zimm's. So there's a like an element that happens where Zimm's, the producer, he knows that Chili is trying to get money to finance the movie that he wants to make. But at the same time, he thinks that he can go to Chili's boss and get more money, right? Like he thinks that he can make a deal with Chili's boss. Chili tried to tell him, because Zimm's had brokered this with Chili earlier. He was like, well, how come we can't just go to Bones? And like Chili's boss is Barboni. So he was like, why can't we just go to Barboni and get more money from him? And Chili was like, nah, Barboni don't even care about movies. Don't even worry about Barboni. And maybe Zimm's thinks that Chili is trying to ward him off because I don't know, maybe he doesn't think Chili knows his boss that well, or maybe he's not impressed with how dangerous mobsters can be, and I think that's probably it. So he's trying to call. He decides that he's going to go ahead and go behind Chili's back and call Barboni, and basically through a bunch of lies and trickery, get Barboni to invest in his movie. And so he calls him on the phone. Barboni is in Miami. He's a Miami mobster. So he calls Barboni in Miami with this proposal about, financing this film or getting, he knows that Barboni wants the money from this guy that made this loan and hasn't paid it back yet. So he's trying to say that, he can help Barboni get this money, but he's trying to be like a tough guy. Like he's trying to act like Chili, but he doesn't have like the credentials. Like he's writing checks that his ass can't cash. So Barboni basically calls Zimm's bluff. He flies to Los Angeles and goes directly and starts asking about his money. And then Barboni senses instantly that Zimm is basically like bullshitting him and from like instantly. So from that moment, Barboni just starts to beat the crap out of Zimm, and in the beating the crap out of him, he basically tells you, and so now you're going to find a way to get my money, right? So that was because Chili had warned him to leave Barboni alone. Don't call Barboni. Don't try to act like Barboni. Don't try to act like you can deal with a guy like Barboni, but Zimm does it anyway. And he gets beat up and he gets sent to the hospital for his troubles. And that's what I mean. Like Barboni kind of knew that Zimm wasn't being sincere. So he got beat up for it. So it's like it's interactions like that really made me enjoy this movie. So I'm thinking that you get the picture, or early in the movie, like essentially the first scene in the movie where yeah, Chili, and he was at this like a restaurant or something, and he wants to find his coat. And the thing is, like, he has in the beginning of the movie, Barboni is not his boss. His boss, his real boss is Momo, and Momo is in New York. So, and I don't know how that situation works. Is Chili on loan from Momo in New York to work in Miami? I'm not exactly how sure that is, but they both Bones and Chili work for Momo, and then Momo dies, and so now Chili works directly with he works directly for Bones or Barboni. He works directly for Barboni. Now he has to do what Barboni says. But before Momo's death and before he has to work for Barboni. I guess they're kind of like, well, not that they're on equal footing. Not that they're on equal footing. Barboni still outranks Chili, but Chili is under Momo's protection. So Chili can basically has carte blanche to do whatever he wants because he knows he's protected by Momo. So when Barboni, whenever he disrespects Chili is able to just do whatever to Barboni. So for example, I was talking about them being in a restaurant, and I think they had a conversation or something like that in the restaurant. And then Barboni leaves. And then when Chili he's getting ready to leave. He goes to the coat room to get his leather jacket or his leather coat, and his leather coat isn't there. And he's like, what happened to my leather coat? And they said, well, Barboni took it because somebody took Barboni's coat. And so now he's upset. He wants to get his leather coat back. So he and his partner, they get in the car. They drive to Barboni's office. And when they get there, Chili starts putting on these leather gloves, and his partner says, you got to be careful because, like Barboni is the boss. Don't go off shooting off your mouth and just saying any old kind of thing. And Chili says, I'm not going to say more than I have to. So he goes up into the building. He gets to Barboni's office and he knocks on the door. But it might not be Barboni's office. It could be his house. I don't know how the mobsters work. Anyway, so Barboni opens the door and Chili he hits him as hard as he can in the head and breaks his nose, picks up his leather jacket and just kind of walks out. Never says anything because he says that he wasn't going to say more than he had to. Now Barboni is like screaming in pain over his broken nose. And Barboni's nose is giant and purple for the rest of the movie. So, and then later on, Barboni, he thinks he's going to get revenge on Chili. So he goes to Chili's office, which is like hidden behind, like a restaurant or a laundromat or something like that. So he goes in, he pulls out his gun, but Chili is already there. He already has his guns out, and he basically shoots Barboni. He grazes Barboni's head with. I don't know if he intended to like kill Barboni, but when Barboni opens the office door, Chili takes a shot at him, and Barboni runs away. And I didn't realize that Barboni got hit, but later on, you see in the movie, there's like a red line that starts from the top of his forehead going to like a little ways up his scalp a little bit, and it's a like a thin red line. So apparently that was a path that the bullet took when Chili shot at him. So he essentially got off the he essentially got shot by Chili, and the bullet, like, I don't even want to, grazed his skull. I guess that's a great way to put it. So it's a number of these moments, these interactions, these conversations that they have that I enjoyed immensely in this movie. So those are some of our favorite parts. If you have any favorite parts of Get Shorty, please leave a note, leave a comment, write an email, contact me on social media. Let me know what you thought of Get Shorty. And now we're going to talk about the top 10 in trivia. All right, now we got the trivia top 10, and let's hit it with Gene Hackman. He turned down this movie at first because he doesn't usually do comedies, but Barry Sonnenfeld said that that's exactly the attitude he wanted from him on set. Play it straight and let the audience decide if it's funny. And that is exactly what happened. It was, because it doesn't really feel like a comedy. It's more like the people aren't acting goofy or overacting like you see in a lot of traditional comedies. It's mostly kind of situational. Like, I feel like all of the characters are playing it straight, but because the situations are so ridiculous, I think the situations are what make it funny. John Travolta initially declined an offer to be in this movie, but was convinced by Quentin Tarantino to do it. According to executive producer and director Barry Sonnenfeld, the other producers were considering John Travolta for the lead role even before his Pulp Fiction 1994 comeback. Yeah, he's good. He's a good actor. According to Elmore Leonard, Martin Weir, played by Danny DeVito, is based on Leonard's own dealings with Dustin Hoffman. So I think what Leonard is saying is that Dustin Hoffman is, well, here's the thing. I am not sure where Danny DeVito drew his characterization from, but apparently when Elmore Leonard wrote the novel, he was writing Dustin Hoffman. And perhaps the impression that he got of Hoffman was that he's a little bit too serious and a little bit self-absorbed, because that is the character that Martin Weir is. Gene Hackman based Harry Zimm on an agent he used to know. He was the phoniest man he ever knew. And that's what I meant by the actors basing their characters on like real life people. It's like that grounds it in a authentic way. It lends the authenticity that a movie like this requires in order to be enjoyable. When people in West Hollywood first saw the billboard with Danny DeVito dressed up as Napoleon Bonaparte credited with Martin Weir's name, they thought it was a real one, and DeVito might have changed his name. The film crew had to explain to the residents that it was just a prop in DeVito's latest movie. So in the film, there are several like large billboards because they're in Los Angeles. If you ever been to Los Angeles, this is a town that's filled with billboards and promoting movies. It's like everything is constantly promoting movies and TV shows. They're on the buses, they're on the billboards, they're on the bus stops. Like every single sign and every single outdoor advertising space is like promoting some type of movie or project of some sort. So there's a huge sign in Los Angeles and it has Danny DeVito dressed as Napoleon, but the name says Martin Weir. So people are confused. Like, is Danny DeVito changing his name, or is that his real name? Is that like his birth name or something like that? Was Danny DeVito a stage name the entire time? And it's a very serious looking Danny DeVito dressed up as Napoleon. And these, I think these billboards are kind of like all over Los Angeles. And what it made me realize is that the first thing is that back in the day, back in the 90s, if you wanted to do an outdoor shoot and you wanted to make a project where you had an actor playing in a fake movie, so one way to do it is to do a billboard and then shoot the scene with the billboard in the background. Now, you see, there are a lot of these scenes where you have billboards in the background with Martin Weir as Napoleon. So the studio apparently had to buy these billboards. They had to buy these billboard signs or buy this advertising this fake movie. They had to do it in real life. So that's the thing. I hadn't really thought of that and I didn't conceive of that would be a thing that they needed to do, because nowadays they don't have to do that. They can just digitally place a fake sign in the background and cover up the real sign, whatever the real sign is there. They can just use computer graphics to replace the sign. So that's not an issue that they would have nowadays, but it is an issue that they had back in the day. It's like when you wanted a fake sign, you would have to make a real sign, put it out in public, and then confuse people as to the meaning of the sign. So that's an interesting tidbit. That it's something fun to think about. So the next time you see a film poster in public, maybe it's not the real one. Maybe that studio decided not to do computer graphics, and maybe they decided to do it and to put a sign out there in real life. MGM didn't want to extensively use Elmore Leonard inspired dialogue in the film and pushed Barry Sonnenfeld and Scott Frank to make many passages more generic than the books. But once John Travolta signed on to the film, he successfully pressured the studio to leave Frank's original draft, which had a lot of colorful dialogue, intact for filming. A specific example of this end result came during the sequence where Chili Palmer, John Travolta, goes to retrieve his coat from Ray Bones Barboni, played by Dennis Farina. I don't know. That's kind of confusing that scene in particular was where they changed a lot of dialogue. They must be talking about the dialogue between Chili and his partner as they were driving to Barboni, because once Chili gets to Barboni, he just walks in, punches Barboni in the face, and walks out. He doesn't say anything. So I think the dialogue where he's talking to his partner in the car, I think that's where that comes from. I mean, I think Barboni he shouts at Chili about a couple of things, but they don't sound like this any distinctive dialogues. It's more like it sounds more generic and less creative. But the conversation in the car, I think that is a very distinct way of talking, and maybe that's something that the studio wanted to change. But I don't think this movie would have worked if they just would have went with generic dialogue. So I'm glad John Travolta basically fought for the integrity of the movie to film it as they had originally envisioned. He's basically fighting for the movie that he signed up for and not for the changes that the studio wanted to impose. In the book, Harry Zimm tells Chili Palmer that he wanted to cast Gene Hackman as the lead in his new film, and Hackman portrayed Harry Zimm in this movie. So that's magical. That's absolutely magical. When Rene Russo first met with Barry Sonnenfeld and Danny DeVito at a restaurant, she had an allergic reaction to the sesame in her tuna sandwich. She broke out in hives and had to go to the doctor, sure that she hadn't gotten the part. Sonnenfeld felt sympathetic and assured her that the role was hers. So that's a nice story. I like that. A scene with Ben Stiller as the director of one of Harry's low-budget B movies was cut from the film because it didn't suit the flow of it. Even though Barry Sonnenfeld thought it was funny, maybe the funniest scene in a movie, it did nothing to advance the plot, so it had to go. And I was able to watch this on YouTube. I'll leave a link to that video below in the show notes. And it's a pretty funny scene. It's not really that funny, and I can see why they cut it. They cut it because as suggested, it didn't really suit the flow of the film. I think including this scene would have probably slowed the movie down considerably, but it was still a funny scene, and it's a nice little what do you call that? It's a nice little cut scene. Barry Sonnenfeld was very eager to work with Danny DeVito on this movie. Eventually, DeVito bought the book, and although he hadn't finished reading it, he said he got it. He wasn't referring to the novel. He was referring to the film rights, because Danny DeVito was the producer of Get Shorty, and I did not know that. So he bought the film. I guess Barry Sonnenfeld and Danny DeVito, they must have had a conversation about Get Shorty, the book, and Danny DeVito decided to go read the book to see if it's a movie that he'd be interested in being in, and he bought the film rights. He was like, he was determined to make this movie after reading like halfway through the book or something. So that's very interesting. He was like, I got it. I got the film rights. I got the film rights. Let's do this. That's pretty interesting. So that's it for the trivia. And now let's go to see what the critics thought. So in this part, we see what the critics thought. And this movie got an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score, or popcorn meter as they call it now, is at 70%. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 6.9 out of 10. So let's see. Margaret A. McKirk of the Cincinnati Enquirer wrote, DeVito's wicked version of a self-absorbed superstar is worth the price of admission alone. And yeah, that was delightful. It's like he took himself entirely too seriously, and that was fun. And it's fun to see DeVito play a more serious person than the kind of roles that he usually does, and which is they all tend to be comedically goofy roles. But in this one, he was playing the straight man that's hard to take seriously. Fred Topo from About.com wrote, I really never got into this. It's slow. Some industry jokes are funny, but mostly really slow. Rene Russo looks great though. And I strongly disagree with Fred Toffel about this movie being slow. It's like, especially if you watched it back then, I think, people of different generations have a different perception of how fast or slow a movie may go. And I am of a mind that I can enjoy a slow paced movie, but this movie does not feel slow. Get Shorty is constantly moving. There are things that are constantly happening that are very interesting. So to complain about this movie in particular being slow, it's like, I just don't get. So strongly disagree. Janet Maslin of New York Times wrote, it's part of the joke here that Chili is a diehard cineast and loves reminiscing about smart, stylish, tough guy films he enjoyed. Get Shorty belongs on that list. And that is true. There are a lot of tough guys in the movie, and they're tough guying it out. And that's another thing about Chili. I remember when I said earlier in the show that Chili is instantly enamored by Hollywood, and he wants to be like, the first thing he wants to do, not all he wants to do, is make a movie. It's like he tells people that like being a shyster or being a loan shark is something that he used to do, even though he's still doing it. He's still doing the loan shark bit, but he's in his mind, mentally, he's put that life behind him in order to move forward with producing his first movie. And the character gets into conversations with the other characters about movies, about parts of the movies they like. I think, I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's one of the reasons that he and Bear got along. Why? It's like, even after beating up Bear, Chili is still fascinated about Bear being a stuntman. So after the fight, and basically Bear is kind of like had the fight taken out of him. Like, he's not knocked out. He's just in a position where he can't fight anymore. He's like, well, tell me more about being a stuntman. And it's like, nah, you don't know about my movies. You hadn't seen my movies. Like, yeah, I seen some of your movies. Tell me more about it. Right. Like, Chili is still enamored. He's still interested about, the making of movies and what it's like being a stuntman. And even after having this fight. So that shows Chili's enthusiasm about movies. So at last we have Cynthia Fuchs from Philadelphia City Paper, and she wrote, for all its winking and nudging and brightly colored sense of delirium, the movie is also strangely flat. And so that might be some people's experience. Like I always say, humor is subjective, but I didn't find it so. I thought it was really, like I said, I found it delightful and entertaining. But, you can't make everybody laugh. Finally, Get Shorty is, as of this recording, on Max. That's it for today. Next week, I want to explore a movie from my childhood. With the conversation about AI, it's worth exploring to see what it looked like back in the day. So join me next week as we play a game. Do you want to play a game? You want to play chess, or do you want to play global thermonuclear war? Let's see what happens when we give artificial intelligence the nuclear codes in next week's movie, War Games. You can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. Please contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. Please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on YouTube, please like or subscribe or leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. One last time, if you like the show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlick Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.